The Great Hall on Nexus Prime had never seen such fear before. Hundreds of alien beings filled the massive space, their strange forms casting odd shadows under the bright lights. Some looked like giant insects with too many legs. Others seemed made of living crystal that sparkled when they moved. A few appeared to be nothing more than floating balls of energy wrapped in metal suits. Ambassador Zekathara stood at the center of it all. Her body was clear like glass and blue light pulsed through her form as she spoke. The other aliens could feel her terror through their mental connections. She had traveled from the edge of the galaxy to bring terrible news. "The Devourers have returned," she said. Her voice echoed through the hall even though she had no mouth to speak with. The words came directly into the minds of everyone present. "They have destroyed 17 star systems already. Billions of our people are dead." The holographic display above her head showed images that made even the bravest aliens look away. Planets burned like giant candles in space. Ships as large as cities were being torn apart by massive black machines. The Devourers looked like mechanical spiders the size of mountains, with arms that reached out to grab and eat everything they touched. Elder Morden raised one of his many tentacles to speak. He was old, even by his species standards, and his purple skin had faded to gray with age. "How many ships do they have?" he asked. "Our scouts counted over 10,000 vessels before they were destroyed," Zekathara replied. "And they are building more. Every planet they consume gives them materials to make new ships and new soldiers." The hall erupted in panicked sounds. Some aliens buzzed like angry bees. Others made clicking noises with their claws. The energy beings hummed at frequencies that hurt to hear. They all knew what this meant. The Devourers were an ancient enemy that the galaxy had barely defeated 1,000 years ago. Back then it had taken the combined efforts of 50 different species to drive them into deep space. "What about our fleet?" asked Captain Veltar of the Hegemony Navy. His scales shifted from blue to red as stress hormones flooded his system. "We have improved our weapons since the last war." Zekathara's form dimmed with sadness. "We tried to stop them at the Kethtar system. 1,500 of our best ships attacked their advance force. Only 3 vessels escaped to report back." She paused, and the blue light in her body flickered like a dying flame. "Their shields absorbed our energy weapons like they were toys. Their hulls healed faster than we could damage them. And when they fired back and she did not need to finish, the images spoke for themselves. The alien ships in the recordings had been beautiful things, sleek and graceful like swimming fish made of metal and light. The Devourer weapons had turned them into burning scrap in seconds. "There must be something we can do," insisted Representative Cliven. His insect-like body twitched nervously and his forearms gestured wildly as he spoke. "We have new technologies, better computers, stronger alloys." "The Devourers adapt," said Elder Morden sadly. "That is what makes them so dangerous. Every weapon we use against them, they learn to counter. Every tactic we try, they develop a response to. They are machines, but they think and learn faster than any organic mind." The hall fell silent. Everyone knew the truth, even if they did not want to admit it. The galaxy's greatest fleets had been destroyed. Their most advanced weapons had proven useless. The Devourers were coming and nothing could stop them. That was when Morden spoke the words that changed everything. "There is one option we have not considered," he said slowly. His tentacles curled and uncurled as he thought. "The Deathworld in Sector 7 Alpha. The humans." A wave of revulsion swept through the hall. Several aliens made sounds of disgust. Others backed away as if the very word was contagious. Representative Cliven's mandibles clicked rapidly in the pattern his species used to express horror. "You cannot be serious," he hissed. "Those creatures are barely civilized. They fight wars over colored pieces of cloth. They poison their own planet for profit. They eat other animals while those animals are still alive. They also," said Zekathara quietly, "have never lost a war when their survival was at stake." The statement hung in the air like a challenge. Everyone in the hall knew the stories about Earth. It was a death world, a planet so hostile that most galactic species would die just from breathing its atmosphere. The gravity was too strong. The weather was too violent. The native life forms were too aggressive, and the dominant species was the worst of all. Humans had evolved not just to survive on their nightmare world, but to thrive there. They seemed to enjoy violence. They celebrated warriors and made heroes out of killers. Their entertainment consisted of watching others fight and suffer. They had nuclear weapons and had actually used them against their own kind. The Galactic Council had quarantined Earth 50 years ago for good reason. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and completely insane by galactic standards. Most civilized species preferred to pretend they did not exist. Even if we could trust them, said Captain Veltar, what could they do that our fleets could not? Their technology is primitive. Their ships are crude. They still use chemical rockets and metal bullets. Sometimes primitive works, Morden replied. The Devourers have spent 1,000 years learning to counter our weapons. They know how to stop energy beams and particle cannons, but have they ever faced kinetic projectiles fired by creatures too stupid to know when they are beaten? The debate went on for hours. Some aliens argued that asking humans for help would be like inviting wolves to guard sheep. Others pointed out that the sheep were already being eaten by something much worse than wolves. In the end, desperation won over fear. The vote was close, but it passed. The galaxy would ask its monsters for help. 3 days later, the message reached Earth. It arrived at a military facility buried deep underground, where humans in green uniforms watched screens and waited for threats from space. General Jake Murphy was drinking coffee when the alien transmission came through the quantum communicator. He listened to the message twice before calling his staff. Admiral Lisa Stone arrived first, her gray hair tied back in the severe style favored by Navy officers. Colonel Ryan Beck came next, still wearing his Air Force flight suit. Dr. Emma Foster was last, carrying a tablet computer and looking annoyed at being pulled away from her research. Well, Murphy said as the alien message finished playing, looks like someone finally needs our help. The 4 humans looked at each other and smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of predators who had just been told that hunting season was open. Outside, Earth continued its slow rotation around the sun. Somewhere in space, machines that ate planets were coming closer, and in the depths of a military bunker, monsters in human form began planning their response. The message from the Galactic Council reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. By Thursday afternoon, every military base on the planet was buzzing with activity. While other species in the galaxy took months to prepare for war, humans moved like their world was already on fire. General Jake Murphy stood in the Pentagon's war room, surrounded by screens showing troop movements from every continent. Red dots marked military bases coming online. Blue lines showed supply routes being established. Green symbols indicated weapon stockpiles being moved to launch sites. How long until we can deploy? He asked Admiral Lisa Stone. 72 hours for the first wave, she replied without looking up from her tablet. The fleet modifications are ahead of schedule. Stone had been in the Navy for 30 years and had seen every kind of crisis. This was just another problem to solve with superior firepower and human stubbornness. At Edwards Air Force Base in California, Colonel Ryan Beck walked through hangar after hangar, filled with Earth's experimental spacecraft. The ships were ugly by any standard. Where alien vessels looked like works of art, human ships looked like they had been built by people who cared more about function than beauty. The UES Thunderbolt was typical of human design philosophy. Its hull was thick metal painted gray with no elegant curves or graceful lines. Weapons jutted out at odd angles. Armor plating had been welded on wherever it would fit. The whole thing looked like someone had taken a submarine and covered it with guns. Sir, the aliens are offering to upgrade our ships with their technology, reported Lieutenant Kate Barnes. She was young and still believed that newer meant better. Beck shook his head and spat tobacco juice into a cup. Tell them thanks, but no thanks. Our gear might not be pretty, but it works, and when it breaks, we know how to fix it. He patted the hull of the nearest ship like it was a faithful dog. These beauties have been tested in Earth gravity, Earth weather, and Earth combat conditions. That makes them tougher than anything those crystal people can build. The alien ships relied on energy shields and advanced materials that could adapt to different threats. Human ships used thick steel and redundant systems. If one part broke, 3 others could do the same job. It was a philosophy born from fighting wars on a planet that actively tried to kill everything that lived on it. Meanwhile, Dr. Emma Foster worked in her laboratory deep beneath NORAD. She had been given samples of Devourer technology to study, and what she found made her laugh with dark humor. The machines were incredibly advanced with self-repairing hulls and adaptive weapon systems. They could counter any known form of galactic warfare. They are sophisticated, she explained to Admiral Stone over a video call. Their computers can process information faster than any organic brain. Their hulls can reshape themselves to deflect energy weapons. Their shields can adapt to any frequency. She held up a piece of twisted metal that had once been part of a Devourer ship. But they are still machines, and humans have been breaking machines since we invented the first hammer. Foster had spent her career studying alien technology, but she had never forgotten that humans had conquered Earth using nothing but sharp sticks and bad attitudes. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways. The real preparation was happening at recruitment centers across the planet. The galaxy expected Earth to send its best soldiers, its most disciplined troops, its most professional warriors. Instead, humanity was sending its rejects. Staff Sergeant Danny Cruz had been kicked out of the Marines for excessive violence during peacekeeping operations. He had broken too many bones and asked too few questions. Now he found himself in charge of a squad of soldiers who were considered too dangerous for normal military service. Private First Class. Maria Santos had anger management problems that made her unsuitable for police work. She had joined the army hoping that legal violence would help her control her temper. It had not worked, but it had made her very good at killing things. Corporal Tim Bradley was a former street fighter from Detroit who had chosen military service over prison time. He was good at following orders, as long as those orders involved hurting people who needed hurting. Petty Officer Second Class Alex Turner had been too violent even for the Navy SEALs. His superiors had described him as having no sense of proportional response. Turner considered this a compliment. These were Earth's monsters, the humans that other humans found disturbing. They were the ones who enjoyed combat a little too much, who asked for more dangerous assignments, who smiled when things got bloody. In peacetime, they were problems to be managed. In wartime, they were weapons to be aimed. "Listen up," General Murphy said during a global broadcast to all human military forces. His face appeared on screens from Alaska to Antarctica, in bunkers and barracks and ships at sea. "The galaxy thinks we are savages. They are not wrong about that. We are the species that invented warfare as entertainment. We are the people who fight each other for fun and call it sports." He paused and looked directly into the camera. "But they are about to learn something important. Sometimes you need savages to fight monsters. Sometimes you need people who are too stupid to know when they are beaten. Sometimes you need humans." The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Soldiers cheered in their barracks. Sailors shouted approval on their ships. Pilots revved their engines in salute. Every human in uniform knew exactly what Murphy meant. They were not the good guys. They were the guys you called when the good guys could not get the job done. The fleet assembled in orbit looked nothing like the elegant formations preferred by galactic navies. Human ships clustered together like a pack of hunting wolves, with no regard for aesthetic appeal or ceremonial dignity. The UES Retribution served as the flagship, a massive vessel that looked more like a flying fortress than a spacecraft. Admiral Stone commanded from the bridge, surrounded by officers who had earned their positions through combat experience rather than academic achievement. Captain Ben Parker commanded the cruiser group from the UES Thunderbolt. Commander Nick Foster led the destroyer squadron. Each ship was crewed by volunteers who had specifically requested assignment to the most dangerous mission available. The aliens watched the human preparations with growing concern. These creatures did not behave like any civilized species. They seemed excited about going to war. They sang violent songs and told stories about past battles. They checked their weapons constantly and complained that they were not being issued enough ammunition. "Perhaps we made a mistake," Ambassador Zekthara transmitted to Elder Mordun. "These humans seem more interested in fighting than in protecting innocent lives." "That," replied Mordun sadly, "is exactly why we need them." On the final day before departure, General Murphy held one last briefing for his senior staff. The room was filled with the kind of people that made other species nervous. They were scarred and hardened and completely without fear. They looked like what they were, professional killers who had spent their lives learning how to break things and hurt people. "The mission is simple," Murphy said. "Find the Devourers. Kill the Devourers. Come home." He looked around the room at faces that showed no doubt or hesitation. "The galaxy is counting on us to save them. Let us show them what Earth is really capable of." The fleet launched on schedule. Earth's monsters were going to war and the galaxy would never be the same. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Keth Morai system, like a pack of wolves emerging from a dark forest. What they found waiting for them was a scene from the galaxy's worst nightmares. The last remnants of the Galactic Defense Force were fighting desperately against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Beautiful alien ships, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and advanced armor, were being systematically destroyed by creatures that looked like they had crawled out of some mechanical hell. The Devourer ships were massive black constructs that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved through space like giant spiders, their hulls bristling with mechanical arms that reached out to grab and tear apart anything within range. Each ship was easily 10 times larger than the biggest human vessel, and there were hundreds of them. Captain Ben Parker watched from the bridge of the UES Thunderbolt as an alien cruiser was caught by one of the mechanical arms. The elegant vessel struggled like a fish on a hook, while the Devourer ship began to literally consume it, breaking down the hull into component materials that disappeared into the machine's dark interior. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Kate Barnes. "Look at the size of those things." Parker nodded grimly. The enemy ships were indeed massive, but he had fought bigger battles with worse odds. "Size is not everything, Lieutenant. Sometimes the biggest guy in the room is just the easiest target." Admiral Stone's voice crackled over the communication system from the flagship UES Retribution. "All ships, this is Stone. We are not here to impress anyone with fancy flying or elegant tactics. We are here to kill things that need killing. Parker, take your cruiser group and hit their left flank. Show these machines what human engineering looks like." The human fleet moved forward with none of the graceful formations preferred by galactic navies. There were no sweeping maneuvers or careful positioning. The ships simply pointed themselves at the nearest enemy and accelerated to attack speed, their engines leaving trails of fire in the darkness. The Devourers noticed the new arrivals but did not seem particularly concerned. Their sensors analyzed the crude human ships and classified them as minimal threats. The energy readings were low, the technology primitive, the weapon systems laughably simple. The machines adjusted their combat algorithms to account for the new variables and continued their systematic destruction of the alien fleet. That was their first mistake. The UES Thunderbolt opened fire with its main guns at a range that made the surviving aliens gasp in shock. Most galactic species preferred to fight at long distance, using precision energy weapons to carefully target specific systems. Humans had a different philosophy. Streams of depleted uranium rounds erupted from the Thunderbolt's gun ports, each projectile moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The rounds were simple chunks of very dense metal accelerated to enormous velocity by magnetic coils. There was nothing elegant about them, nothing sophisticated, nothing that should have worked against advanced alien technology. They punched through the nearest Devourer ship's adaptive shielding like it was made of paper. The machine's defense systems had been designed to counter energy weapons, particle beams, and exotic matter projectors. They could adapt to any known form of galactic warfare, adjusting their frequency responses and energy absorption patterns in real time. But they had never encountered weapons that were nothing more than heavy objects moving very fast. "Direct hit," reported the Thunderbolt's weapons officer with satisfaction. "Target showing structural damage and system failures." Captain Parker smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Good. Now let us see how they like a full broadside." The human cruiser group opened fire simultaneously, filling space with thousands of kinetic projectiles. The Devourer ships tried to adapt, their hulls reshaping themselves to deflect the incoming rounds. But there was no adaptation possible against simple kinetic energy. The machines could only absorb so much punishment before their structural integrity failed. "Human fleet, this is Captain Zarthol of the Celestial Wing," came a transmission from one of the surviving alien ships. The voice carried a mixture of amazement and horror. "Your tactics are highly unconventional." "Unconventional?" Colonel Beck's voice carried over the radio from his fighter squadron. "Lady, we have not even gotten started yet." Beck was leading a wing of human attack craft toward the largest Devourer ship. The fighters were small and fast, designed more like atmospheric aircraft than spacecraft. They carried no energy shields, no exotic weapons, no advanced defense systems. What they did carry was nuclear warheads and pilots who were completely insane. The Devourer point defense systems tracked the incoming fighters and opened fire with precision energy beams. The alien ships watched in shock as the human pilots flew directly through the defensive fire, their crude armor somehow absorbing damage that should have vaporized them instantly. "Target acquired," Beck announced calmly as his fighter approached the Devourer ship's hull. "Deploying special delivery package." The nuclear warhead detonated against the machine's hull with the force of a small star. The explosion tore a hole in the Devourer ship large enough to fly a cruiser through, sending debris spinning into space. The machine's self-repair systems tried desperately to close the breach, but the damage was too extensive. Meanwhile, Sergeant Danny Cruz was preparing for the part of the battle that only humans would even consider attempting. While the aliens fought ship to ship, maintaining safe distances and using long-range weapons, humanity was preparing to board the enemy vessels. "Listen up, you beautiful monsters," Cruz told his squad over the radio as their assault shuttle approached a damaged Devourer ship. "The aliens think we are crazy for trying this. They are probably right. But crazy is what we do best." Private Maria Santos checked her rifle for the third time and grinned. "How hard can it be? We go in, we break things, we kill machines. Sounds like a normal Tuesday to me." The assault shuttle punched through the Devourer ship's hull like a bullet through aluminum foil. The humans poured out into corridors that pulsed with organic machinery, their boots clanging on metal floors that tried to grab them with mechanical tendrils. The interior of the ship was a nightmare of living technology. The walls breathed like lungs, pumping fluids through visible veins. Mechanical spiders the size of cars scuttled along the ceiling, their red sensors tracking the human intruders. The air itself seemed hostile, filled with acidic vapors that would have killed most galactic species instantly. The humans responded by laughing and opening fire. "Contact front," shouted Santos as a group of Devourer drones emerged from the walls. The machines were designed to be terrifying, with razor-sharp appendages and acid projectors that could dissolve most known materials. "Is that the best you got?" bellowed Corporal Tim Bradley, emptying his magazine into the nearest drone before drawing his combat knife. "I have seen scarier things in downtown Detroit on a Saturday night." The Devourers had calculated for many possibilities, but they had not calculated for a species that found horror amusing and responded to fear with violence. The machines were designed to break the morale of their enemies, to inspire terror and despair. Humans seemed to find the whole experience entertaining. Cruz led his squad deeper into the ship, setting demolition charges on every critical system they could find. The Devourers tried to stop them with security drones, automated defenses, and environmental hazards. The humans treated each obstacle like a game, competing to see who could destroy the most machines or survive the most dangerous situations. "Charges set," Cruz reported as his team reached the ship's reactor core. "Recommend immediate evacuation. Unless someone wants to see what happens when we blow up a machine the size of a city block." The human assault teams extracted just as their charges detonated throughout the Devourer ship. The massive vessel broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up the darkness like a new star. Around them, the tide of battle was turning as human tactics proved more effective than 1,000 years of galactic military doctrine. The Devourers were learning something that would change their programming forever. They had encountered a species that did not just fight to survive, but actually enjoyed the process of destruction. These creatures called humans seemed to thrive on chaos and violence in ways that no machine could understand or counter. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers began to experience something that might have been fear. The war that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Where other species fought with precision and restraint, humans brought chaos and overwhelming violence to every engagement. What had started as a desperate last stand became a systematic extermination campaign. Sergeant Danny Cruz found himself inside his 15th Devourer ship in as many days. The corridors no longer seemed alien and threatening. They had become familiar hunting grounds where he and his squad practiced their craft of destruction. The mechanical spiders that had initially seemed terrifying now reminded him of oversized insects that needed stepping on. "Room clear," reported Private Maria Santos as she finished eliminating a group of Devourer maintenance drones. Her rifle smoking from sustained fire, she kicked one of the mechanical corpses to make sure it was dead. "These things are getting easier to kill." Corporal Tim Bradley nodded while setting demolition charges on what appeared to be a primary data processing center. "Either we are getting better at this or they are getting worse at fighting back." The truth was probably both. Human boarding tactics had evolved with each assault, becoming more efficient and more brutal. The soldiers had learned which Devourer systems were critical, which defenses could be bypassed, and which weapons worked best in the tight confines of ship interiors. They moved through enemy vessels like cancer, spreading destruction faster than the machines could adapt. Meanwhile, The Devourers were experiencing something their programming had never anticipated. Their adaptive algorithms were designed to counter new threats by analyzing patterns and developing countermeasures. But humans did not follow patterns. They changed tactics randomly, used different approaches for identical situations, and seemed to make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. Charges set on the reactor core, Cruz announced. Extraction in 30 seconds. His squad moved toward the exit with practiced efficiency. They had done this so many times that boarding and destroying enemy ships had become routine. The Devourer ship tried to stop them with emergency bulkheads and security protocols, but the humans simply blasted through any obstacle in their path. Outside in space, the larger battle continued with equal brutality. Admiral Lisa Stone commanded the human fleet from the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as her ships carved through Devourer formations like chainsaws through paper. Where alien tactics emphasized preservation of forces and careful maneuvering, human doctrine focused on maximum damage regardless of cost. Admiral, the Devourers are attempting to retreat from the Kethtar system, reported Commander Nick Foster. They appear to be regrouping at the edge of the gravity well. Stone's smile was predatory. Negative on letting them retreat. All ships pursue and engage. These things eat planets for breakfast. We do not let them go home to tell their friends about us. The UES Vengeance under Captain Sarah Mills had already anticipated the order. Her heavy cruiser was accelerating toward the retreating Devourer ships with its weapons charged and ready. Mills had earned her command by ramming a pirate vessel during the Titan Rebellion, and she had never met a problem that could not be solved with sufficient application of violence. Target the largest ship, she ordered her weapons officer. Full salvo, all tubes. The Vengeance unleashed every weapon it carried simultaneously. Nuclear torpedoes, kinetic penetrators, and high-explosive missiles converged on the Devourer command ship. The machine's adaptive shields tried to counter the incoming barrage, but there were too many different weapons arriving too quickly. The explosion lit up half the solar system. When the glare faded, the Devourer command ship was gone, reduced to expanding cloud of superheated plasma and metal fragments. The other machine ships paused in their retreat, their collective intelligence struggling to process the loss of a major node. That pause was fatal. Human ships swarmed over the confused Devourers like sharks attacking wounded prey. There was no mercy, no quarter given, no opportunity for surrender. The machines had made the mistake of threatening Earth, and humans took that sort of thing personally. Colonel Ryan Beck led his fighter wing through the enemy formation, his pilots weaving between massive Devourer ships while delivering nuclear payloads with surgical precision. The attack craft were small and fast, designed to get in close where the enemy's heavy weapons could not target them effectively. "This is Beck to all fighters," he announced over the radio. "Remember, these machines learn from every engagement. Do not give them time to adapt. Hit hard, hit fast, and keep moving." The human pilots responded with enthusiasm that bordered on mania. They dove through defensive fire that should have destroyed them, delivered their weapons at point-blank range, and somehow managed to escape before the explosions could catch them. Several fighters were lost, but their pilots had accomplished their missions before dying. Dr. Emma Foster monitored the battle from her position aboard the UES Discovery, recording everything for later analysis. What she observed confirmed her theories about human psychological warfare. The Devourers were machines, but they were learning machines, and what they were learning was terrifying them. "The psychological impact is as significant as the physical damage," she noted in her report. "The Devourers are programmed to expect rational behavior from their opponents. Human irrationality is causing system errors in their decision-making protocols. The machines had been designed to fight civilized species that valued their own lives and sought to minimize casualties. Humans seemed to consider personal safety a secondary concern at best. They took risks that no sane species would attempt, accepted losses that should have broken their morale, and celebrated violence in ways that defied all logic. The retreat became a rout that spread across 3 star systems. Devourer ships fled in all directions, but human vessels pursued them relentlessly. Earth's fleet had been designed for endurance rather than elegance, and they could maintain pursuit long after more sophisticated ships would have been forced to stop for repairs and resupply. The UES Thunderbolt caught a fleeing Devourer ship near the 4th planet of the system. Captain Ben Parker ordered a ramming attack that should have destroyed both vessels. Instead, the human ship punched through the machine's hull like a bullet through tissue paper, its reinforced armor absorbing damage that would have vaporized any other spacecraft. Ramming successful, Parker reported matter-of-factly. Target destroyed. We are leaking atmosphere from decks 7 through 12, but engines are still functional. Admiral Stone shook her head in amazement. By any reasonable standard, Parker's ship should have been a total loss. Instead, it was already maneuvering to engage the next target. Human engineering philosophy emphasized redundancy and durability over sophistication, and it was proving its worth in the most extreme conditions possible. The final engagement took place near a gas giant, where the last major devourer force had attempted to make a stand. The machines had positioned themselves in the planet's gravity well, using the massive celestial body as both shield and weapon. It was a tactically sound position that should have been impossible to assault. Humans assaulted it anyway. All ships, this is Admiral Stone, came the final order of the campaign. General quarters. Battle stations. Let us finish this. The human fleet dove into the gravity well like eagles attacking prey. They ignored the tactical disadvantages, the dangerous radiation, and the crushing gravitational forces. What mattered was closing with the enemy and destroying them completely. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete annihilation of the Devourer fleet. When it was over, the gas giant's upper atmosphere glowed with the light of 1,000 burning wrecks. Space around the planet was filled with debris that would eventually be pulled down into the crushing depths below. Mission accomplished. Admiral Stone reported to Earth. Devourer fleet elements in this sector have been eliminated. Recommend continued pursuit of fleeing units. The response from General Murphy was immediate and enthusiastic. Outstanding work. Continue operations until all targets are destroyed. By the end of the month, 17 Devourer fleets had been reduced to scrap metal. The machines that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries had been broken by a species they had never encountered before. The hunters had become the hunted, and their hunters were very good at their job. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as Earth's monsters finished their work. The Devourers were not just defeated but completely exterminated, their ships destroyed and their technology captured for study. Humanity had accomplished in weeks what the combined galactic fleets had failed to do in years of fighting. The war was over, but its consequences were just beginning. The victory celebration on Nexus Prime was the most uncomfortable party in galactic history. The Great Hall that had once echoed with desperate pleas for help now hosted a gathering where the guests of honor terrified their hosts, more than the original threat ever, had General Jake Murphy stood at the center of it all, looking completely out of place among the elegant alien dignitaries. His simple green uniform contrasted sharply with the flowing robes and crystalline forms surrounding him. He seemed unimpressed by the grandeur of the hall, the sophisticated technology, or the reverent attention being paid to him. The Devourer threat has been neutralized, he reported in the same tone he might have used to discuss the weather. My people eliminated their main fleet elements, destroyed their primary construction facilities, and are currently hunting down the survivors. Should be finished by next Tuesday. Ambassador Zekthara's crystalline form flickered with emotions that had no names in human language. Fear mixed with gratitude, relief blended with terror. In 3 weeks you accomplished what our combined forces could not do in months of fighting. Murphy shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to be both casual and intimidating. Yeah, well, you asked for help. We helped. The simple statement hung in the air like a death sentence. Every alien in the hall was thinking the same thing, though none dared speak it aloud. The humans had not just defeated the Devourers, they had annihilated them with an efficiency that defied belief. 17 separate fleets, thousands of ships, millions of mechanical soldiers, all reduced to scrap metal in less time than it took most species to plan a military campaign. Elder Moradin's tentacles writhed with nervous energy as he asked the question that everyone was thinking. And now? What do humans want in return? The silence that followed was deafening. Every species in the galaxy knew what conquerors typically demanded. Territory to claim as their own. Resources to fuel their expansion. Subjugation of weaker species. The right to rule over those they had saved. Murphy looked genuinely confused by the question. We want to go home. Beer is getting warm and baseball season starts next month. If the previous silence had been uncomfortable, this one was completely bewildering. The assembled aliens stared at the human delegation with expressions of pure incomprehension. They had expected demands for tribute, threats of conquest, or at minimum a request for permanent military bases and trading rights. "You do not want to join the Galactic Council?" asked Zekathera, her voice carrying disbelief. "Claim territory? Establish trade agreements? Set up colonies?" Admiral Lisa Stone stepped forward, her gray hair and stern expression making her look like everyone's disapproving grandmother. "Look, we appreciate the offer, but we have got our own problems to deal with. Climate change, social media, and trying to figure out why cats knock things off tables. We will keep the communication channels open, though. You need something killed, give us a call." The human delegation began packing their equipment with the same efficiency they had shown in combat. There were no lengthy goodbye ceremonies, no formal speeches, no attempts to establish permanent diplomatic relationships. They had come to do a job, finished it, and now they wanted to go home. Representative Cliven finally worked up the courage to ask the question that had been haunting him since the first reports of human combat effectiveness had arrived. Why did you help us?" "We quarantined your species. We called you monsters. We treated you like a threat to galactic civilization." Colonel Ryan Beck paused in his packing and looked back at the assembled aliens. His expression was not unkind, but it carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Because you asked nicely, and because sometimes monsters are exactly what you need." The words carried implications that made every alien in the hall shiver with something that might have been fear, or might have been relief. The humans were leaving, but they were also making it clear that they could return if needed. The galaxy now knew that somewhere in the darkness, on a world that most species considered uninhabitable, lived creatures that could end any threat with casual efficiency. Dr. Emma Foster had spent the weeks since the battle analyzing captured Devourer technology and documenting human combat performance. Her findings would reshape galactic understanding of warfare for generations to come. The machines had been sophisticated beyond anything the galaxy had previously encountered, but they had been designed to fight civilized species with predictable behaviors and rational tactics. The Devourers adapted to counter every known form of galactic warfare, she explained in her final report. Energy weapons, particle beams, exotic matter manipulation. They had responses to all of it. What they could not counter was primitive kinetic weapons deployed by a species with no concept of acceptable losses. The human fleet departed Nexus Prime the same way it had arrived, loud and crude and absolutely terrifying. Behind them, they left a galaxy that was fundamentally changed. The Devourers were gone, their 1,000-year reign of terror ended by creatures that the galaxy had dismissed as barely civilized barbarians, but the aliens were beginning to understand that perhaps they had been looking at the situation backwards. Perhaps the humans were not the barbarians in this scenario. Perhaps true civilization required the capacity for controlled barbarism when circumstances demanded it. The weeks that followed brought reports from across the galaxy that confirmed everyone's new reality. Human ships were patrolling former Devourer territories, hunting down the last scattered remnants of the machine fleets. There was no mercy, no negotiation, no possibility of surrender. The humans had decided that the machines needed to be extinct, and they were pursuing that goal with the same relentless efficiency they had shown in the main battle. Captain Ben Parker's final report from the Outer Rim was typical of human thoroughness. Sector 7743 is clear. Destroyed 15 Devourer scout ships and 2 construction platforms. No survivors. Continuing patrol to Sector 7744. The galaxy tried to return to normal, but normal had been redefined. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to Devourer attacks were reopening. Colonies that had been evacuated were being resettled. Worlds that had lived in fear for generations were beginning to hope again. And through it all, the knowledge lingered that humanity was out there, ready to respond if called upon. The monsters had returned to their deathworld, but they had left behind the promise that they would come back if needed. The galaxy's nightmares had been defeated by creatures that were even more frightening, and somehow that felt like the most comforting thing imaginable. On Earth, life continued much as it always had. General Murphy returned to his desk job at the Pentagon. Admiral Stone went back to worrying about naval budgets and personnel issues. Colonel Beck resumed testing experimental aircraft. Dr. Foster published her research and began working on new projects. The soldiers and sailors and pilots who had fought in the war were welcomed home as heroes. but they seemed more interested in getting back to their normal lives than in celebrating their galactic conquest. Sergeant Cruz returned to his training duties. Private Santos was promoted and assigned to a new unit. Corporal Bradley went back to Detroit and opened a small auto repair shop. They had saved the galaxy, but to them it had been just another mission. There were no parades, no monuments, no grand celebrations. The humans had done what humans did best, broken things that needed breaking and then moved on to the next problem. The galaxy had cried out for aid and Earth's monsters had responded. The question now was not whether humanity would answer if called again, but whether anyone would be brave enough to make that call. In the end, it did not matter. The humans were going about their business, drinking their beer and watching their baseball, secure in the knowledge that they lived on a world where even the wildlife was too dangerous for galactic standards. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, any surviving machines or monsters or threats to galactic civilization had learned a valuable lesson. When you absolutely positively need something dead overnight, call humanity, they deliver.